Salam and peace. You're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Raku, and of course on our own website, muslimnetwork.tv. I was about to say .org. I'm confused and lost between .org and different things. So muslimnetwork.tv. I was watching about a long time ago, wanted to visit White House website. So .gov was not that established. So I ended up typing whitehouse.org. Wow. And suddenly I was under attack. Not under attack by White House, but pornographic images, one after another. I tried to close one, but 5, 6 will pop up, and it was happening so fast. And it was making me very nervous. This was the first encounter whatsoever with pornography. I just nervously pulled down the whole plug from the computer. I didn't know what else to do. And after 25, 26 years of that incident, today I went back very cautiously to the same website, whitehouse.org. Very cautiously, because I know how to close it down if it is the same type of things. Only to find out it was some anti-Trump website, which was occupying whitehouse.gov. And it seems President does not have enough power to shut down that website, which is mocking him. That was a while ago. Didn't have many encounter, but now I wonder if that was really a website of whitehouse.org or some other technology was attacking me when I went there, because I heard they can take over different things, as you might have heard, Zoom bombing. So was it some type of White House, quote unquote, White House bombing or whatever it was taking place? And I still don't know why closing one window will pop up many other windows. Completely reverse of that. No one knows how big is the porn industry itself and power of its technology, as I faced long time ago. But people estimate somewhere $6 billion to almost $100 billion. No wonder they are powerful. No wonder they are everywhere. As a Muslim and as an Imam, a rule of thumb I give out to Muslim community, which I don't think is enough, but I will share that with you anyway. If it is haram to do, it's haram to watch. Well, this is not, don't look into your fiqh book, you will not find it. I just came up with that. Maybe I should write my own fiqh book about that. So it's not easy to deal with pornography addiction, but we have two persons, two very good, smiling people who deal with it day in and day out. Ehsan Rogers, welcome to Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you so much, Imam, for inviting me.
And Moira McGuire, welcome to Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you as well for having me.
Thank you. And Ehsan Rogers have 19 years of experience dealing in the field of mental health, working with a diverse population with extensive experience with active duty military personnel, veterans, and their families. And Moira McGuire is Assistant Chief of Integrative Health and Wellness at the Walter Reed Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. She's certified sexuality counselor. Wow, this Walter Reed is the place where president is taken for some reason, right?
So I am here in an unofficial capacity. So I am here just as a nurse and a sexuality counselor.
Okay, so Ehsan, do you have any disclaimer?
Also, I'm here in my own personal capacity as a clinical social worker and a certified sex therapist. and I have a private practice in Frederick, Maryland. So I'm here speaking from my own professional experience in those capacities.
All right. So I'm the only one who is in the official capacity of the host of Muslim Network TV here. Welcome to our show. How widespread is pornography? Any one of you?
So I think it's important to sort of define what we mean when we talk about pornography, because there are nuances, and it's important to understand what those are. So there's erotica, there is fantasy, there is pornography. And I think for most people, when they think about pornography, they're thinking about exploitation, domination, whereas erotica is more of storytelling, fantasy, with some sexual experiences there. And so it's important to sort of understand from the beginning what it is that we're talking about. So I don't know how you would sort of define what you mean when you say pornography. Are you just speaking of images in any form, videos, photographs? What would your definition look like?
Wow. So you're putting me on a spot here. I have no definition. I mean, all of the above, which I say that is haram to do, haram to watch. So to me, I don't know these technical definition, and I don't know, probably most of our audience probably do not know. So I didn't know that pornography only has, in which there is a sort of sexual exploitation and erotica. So we do not have a high level of interest in the technical definition,
Okay.
but as a phenomena, as a commercial phenomena, how big is this?
So commercially, as you mentioned earlier, this is $1 billion industry, and it's so pervasive in so many areas of our lives, and has been increasingly so over several years, that it's almost inescapable in some arenas. So it's very prevalent, but in terms of its use, most research suggests that people between the ages of 18 and 39 are probably the most the highest utilizers of different types of pornography.
Okay, and how people get introduced to pornography? Moira, do you have any idea how people are initiated into this? I mean, I'd describe the trying to visit a White House website.
Sure. So I would say historically, it was probably done in a more predictable way. So historically, we know that this country used to have red light districts. So if you were interested in engaging in activities or seeing things of that nature, you could actually go to a destination. Magazines came on the market. Some people do fall into it accidentally. I will say that technology and cell phones, tablets, having things right in the palm of your hand was absolutely a game changer. And I think some of the struggles around these conversations are related to the fact that, porn is a very provocative term. It's a provocative subject, they're provocative images, they're provocative thoughts. And sometimes that provocative nature is a challenge to us thinking about this logically and encouraging people to look more closely at what the real experience is, what the real numbers are, versus this kind of sensational aspect around porn.
So listening to both of your answers, it seems like this is a big field which has definitions and the way people are introduced. And so, is this a field of its own? You being from mental health and all that, is it a discipline, a subdiscipline somewhere?
Yes, it is a subdiscipline. As I mentioned, I am a certified sex therapist. So there is a whole national organization whose job it is to sort of certify individuals who gain enough education and enough experience to be certified to sort of work with individuals around issues related to sexuality, to include pornography use, whether it's maladaptive in their functioning or not. So there, it is a whole field subclinical category unto itself.
So are there people who do PhDs in this?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So that's a field and a discipline. So it's not just a $100 billion industry, but there are people who are doing research in that area and all that. Most of the research is done from how to prevent people. So before we go there, what damage pornography, in my broader definition, not some technical definition, can cause in people's life?
You said, what damage does it cause in people's lives?
Does it have a harmful impact? I mean, as a Muslim, I considered it to be a sin. But in terms of real life, does it have a harm for human life?
Yes. So, I mean, it can. Anything that there are some factors that you want to be mindful of when you're talking about pornography. You're talking about what kinds of pornography one might be viewing is relevant. How frequently one is viewing pornography is relevant. And it's important to be careful when you talk about an addiction, because an addiction is a compulsion. And not everyone who views pornography has a compulsion or views with the frequency that one might if they do have an addiction. But when you're talking about use, you're talking about, for some people, some of the negative impacts can be desensitization, unrealistic expectations about relationships and sexual experiences with another person. So pornography is very one-dimensional. And in order to engage in healthy relationships with another person, there are other factors involved to be able to reach that conclusion. So you want to be able to have a realistic understanding about relationships, and pornography doesn't do that. And also, to be quite honest, most mainstream pornography is geared towards male sexual pleasure. And so if you are a male watching this, and this is your only impression of what sexual experiences should look like, you are going into experiences with another individual with that mindset. Or if you are a woman looking at these types of pornographic images, then you think that sexual experiences should encompass the male's pleasure and not your own. So it can give a warped sort of impression about what the sexual experience should look like.
I think, in addition, depending on what you're doing when you're watching pornography. So, for instance, we know that during orgasm, there's a release of oxytocin, which is that love hormone. It's a bonding hormone. And so you don't want to bond to images on a screen. You want to bond to a human being who's with you. So.
Okay, so we will take a short break. And when we come back, we'll continue the conversation impact on people. I mean, there's some people who will say, well, in Islam, alcohol is haram. We don't drink. Media continue to come up one research or the other. Well, little bit of this is good for your health. But the addiction is bad, except that addiction is the one which defines a whole lot of criminal behavior and all sort of things. So let's dwell a little bit on that. You're watching Muslim Network TV, and with me is two experts who are trained to help people deal with pornographic or other similar behavior. Moira McGuire and Ihsan Rogers. Will be right back after these messages.
Assalamu alaikum. Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. You're watching Galaxy 19 satellite and Amazon Fire TV, as well as muslimnetwork.org. So you're saying, you both seems to be very careful in your answers. As professionals who have knowledge in this field, I do understand you need to be very thoughtful, measured in how you deal with it. My goal and purpose in this show is if there are some people who are worried about watching pornography or whatever level, whether it reaches high level of addiction or mid level of addiction, or it has just begun and may lead to that direction, to them to understand that how widespread this concern is. And then next stage of conversation is that there are things which they can do if they're not feeling comfortable and want to liberate themselves from this sin. So I like you to be helpful in this area as well, that what percentage of population, say in the United States, is engaged in there and how widespread it might be among Muslim. We are the best people, right? We don't have any of these problems.
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, tell us how much Ihsan, this thing is common.
So it is very common. As I mentioned earlier, there is a wide swath of individuals in the United States in particular who experiment with pornography, viewing pornography, and more men than women. I think about 46% of men and about 20% of women or so, usually between the ages of 18 and 39. Although some children get exposed to it much earlier, often incidentally, like you did, but sometimes from a friend who may have sent them something because they're all carrying electronic devices in their pockets now. And so it's very accessible, but there is a large percentage of individuals. Now, I will say that there isn't a whole lot of research on how prevalent this is in the Muslim community, but that doesn't mean that it isn't happening. And so I try to be measured in my responses, in part because what we don't want to do is speak in absolutes. If someone within our community is struggling with something like this, you want them to feel comfortable enough to be able to come forward and discuss it. And so we always try to do is reduce the incidence of guilt and shame associated with talking about this, because things are so absolute. And what we do know from some of the things that are out there that have been published is that everything you hear, as you mentioned earlier, about pornography in Islam is it is haram. It is wrong, and you shouldn't be doing that. But if someone is engaged in that, usually there's a reason why. And in sex therapy, it's important to look at and address the reasons why people reach for pornography. And so that is varied and vast as well. So it would be a mistake to look at it in a very sort of monolithic way and assume that everyone who reaches for pornography is doing it for the same reasons, because that just isn't true.
So, Moira, have you encountered Muslims who have come for help in this area?
I have worked with people who have concerns about how they use porn. I would not say we generally don't address belief systems unless people are interested in sharing that. And my role is really to look at how people identify healthy behaviors in their lives,
Mhm.
uh, and how I can support them. And so, the issue. So before you mentioned that if you shouldn't be doing it, you shouldn't be watching it. Well, but there are times when we're allowed to have sex. So I think the idea of like having sex and watching isn't the issue. The issue is to determine and create a state of sexual health in our lives as individuals, as couples, as families. And so I think that that's ultimately the goal. As San said, we really want to prevent any aspects of shame, which I will say sometimes as an Ummah, that's our biggest struggle, right? That's a place of comfort for many people to immediately shame people. It's very counter to any type of productive work that one might want to engage in. Um, and at the end of the day, people need to set their own goals, and then I help them to achieve it. And one way that I do is to really help them understand that sex is a healthy behavior, the same way that eating nutritious food is a healthy behavior, and sleeping well at night is a healthy behavior, and exercising is a healthy. These are healthy behaviors. Um, and when we do that, then it allows people to remove those elements of like guilt and shame, right? So you're going to the gym. I'm not going to tell you whether you need to get on the elliptical, whether you need to like bang the plates, or whether you should
Oh,
be in.
I really need to know that one. Unfortunately, nobody is telling me. Tell me, what is the impact on families, marriage, and relationship of those people who are deeply in there?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. And it really sometimes depends on who you ask. There are, and it really depends on the belief systems and values of the people that you're talking about. So, in Muslim communities, as I mentioned, there isn't a whole lot of information out there about the impact on our families. But just speaking globally, there are many couples who struggle with this, where maybe one of the individuals in the relationship or in the marriage has different views about pornography use than the actual user, obviously, or there are feelings of that it is infidelity in some way. There are some couples who perceive pornography use as a form of infidelity. And so, because the different perspectives are so varied, so are the impacts. There are many patients who I have worked with who said their initial introduction into pornography was finding their father's or their grandfather's Playboy magazines. And it was almost like a rite of passage in their families to pass those magazines down to one another. And so we're talking about issues of our definitions of manhood and womanhood, what it means to be a man, how virility is associated with manhood, and how that plays out in many different families or rites of passage. So it's wide, it's vast, it's varied. Some people don't do very well with how they use pornography, or how they what they use it for and why they're reaching for it. And they struggle with it because it is often incongruent with their value system. And so ultimately, from a therapeutic standpoint, that's what I'm working with couples to try to address, is how they live their lives in a congruent way that's consistent with their values. And so we explore that. And I think in the Muslim community, that's something that we could do a little bit better is, we're it's okay to say, no, this is bad, don't do this, but we should probably put a little bit more emphasis into how we say yes to things around sexuality and sexual functioning. What constitutes or what illustrates a healthy sexual relationship as a Muslim man and woman. And so we have to sort of come out of the shadows and start talking a little bit more about what that looks like, so that people can start to formulate that in an operational way in their own lives.
Listening to both of you, Ilhan and Moira, it seems like there is a proportionate relationship between, if the healthy sexual relationship and education is higher, the chances of getting through pornography are lower. Will you, based on your experience, do you think there is a correlation like that?
I would be comfortable. Again, correlation is not causation, but I would absolutely always agree that it's important to be informed. I think that we often develop these concepts of ourselves that are not accurate or true, and they're often rooted in lack of information or misinformation. And I will say one that I pretty consistently deal with is related to the fact that women and men experience desire and arousal in a very different way.
Mhm.
So, and it's one reason why, around this idea of eroticism, right, versus porn. Eroticism is, the intent behind it is really around intimacy. And there are opportunities for curiosity to think about, well, what is arousing to me? And that's important for women, because women don't experience desire unless they've experienced arousal. That's very different for men. Men experience desire and arousal in a way where it's almost simultaneous. It's very difficult for them to distinguish which came first. It's very different for women. And because people don't know that, we've kind of set up these paradigms where there's this sense that, well, women never want sex. Well, that's because you don't understand how women work. When people understand how women work, then it's a big game changer. So the importance of being informed and having knowledge, I think, cannot be understated. And if we end up going down that path because of porn, alhamdulillah, I'm okay with that.
But I would add on to that, and I would say that as a woman, if you are not educated about your own arousal, you can't educate your partner about what is arousing to you. And so that conversation has to start at home. It has to start with having your young adults understand and what is acceptable exploration, and how do you communicate that to a potential partner, so that you are not missing out on having your own needs met. And so when you asked about impact on relationships and families, I would say that what we see in globally in relationships is probably also true in Muslim relationships, and that people are struggling with talking about these things because there's a lack of exploration and honest dialogue about what it means to be pleasured.
Yeah.
Well, you both are boldly taking conversation into an area where I don't know how to ask proper questions.
Well, I will, just to piggyback on what Ihsan said, when I think about the answer to that question of how it impacts families, again, that's different for every person and every family. But one thing that I have noticed is communication around sex and pleasure is very, very difficult. And, communication around sex education is very difficult. And I think that if it's...
And hosting a show on this topic is extremely difficult.
Right. So if it's difficult for you to talk about your own experience and share that with your partner, then I imagine those challenges with communication are going to reveal themselves in other areas of your life as well.
Well, let's take a break. You're watching Muslim Network TV, and we are doing some strange conversation here, which these two ladies are pleading should be done more often. We'll be right back after these messages.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. Past campaigns covered a wide range of humanitarian concerns. Through Bosnia Task Force, imams and leaders of Chicago's Muslim community worked to ensure Bosnia became a top national issue. This led to life-saving American policies in Bosnia. A key accomplishment was helping to get rape declared a war crime. Initiatives also included Kosovo Task Force, Central African Republic Task Force, and Flint Coalition, which brought awareness to the water crisis affecting the people of Flint, Michigan. Highlights of our work include supporting Black Lives Matter, Parliament of the World Religions, addressing climate change.
So wasteful consumption starts the ruthless production, and that's where we need all the fossil fuel in the world.
And prominent media exposure.
This is Imam Malik Mujahid, President of Justice for All.
And I'm the Director of Outreach for Justice for All.
And that's why we need to go back to what worked.
Today we're demanding an apology from the CEO of Costco.
The Chinese crackdown on Uyghurs and other Turkic people has only gotten worse.
Current programs such as Burma Task Force advocate for the rights of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, internally displaced populations, and all those denied freedom of movement and at risk of starvation. Through this, we mobilized thousands of calls to elected representatives. This paved the way for the U.S. to increase funding for Rohingya refugees from $30 million to over $600 million. 2 of our documentaries were featured on international news outlets. The Rohingya People, A Slow-Burning Genocide on BBC World News, and Rohingya Refugees Tell of Massacre was featured on CNN. We've organized rallies, UN mission visits, expanded presentations on campuses, promoted research and report writing, outreach to think tanks, media, and other influencers. Faith Coalition educates about the Rohingya genocide and crimes against humanity faced by ethnic groups in Burma. We've traveled to refugee camps, convened a meeting of Karen, Kachin, and Rohingya leaders, both to encourage cooperation and to guide them in congressional outreach. We organized Rohingya Advocacy Day. This led to over 100 participants visiting the offices of 60 U.S. senators and congressional representatives. Free Kashmir advocates for the people of Kashmir. Long-term goals include the call for self-determination, the end of the Indian military's occupation of the territory, and raising awareness of Kashmiri issues among the American people. After the August 5th reinvasion of Kashmir, we organized national protests in front of various Indian government buildings, partnered with Stand with Kashmir, and launched a petition condemning the Gates Foundation's decision to present Prime Minister Modi a humanitarian award. Save Uyghur informs Muslims and neighbors of other faiths about the ongoing cultural genocide of Uyghur Muslims and mobilizes public support. Our projects include boycotting Chinese products with our Fast from China campaign, pushing Bill S-178 in the Senate, and organizing a nationwide protest of Costco. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Moira McGuire and Ehsan Rogers. Both deal with a field. They both are professionals in helping people in their well-being and sexual health. And let me ask you this question. If someone feels that he watches pornography, or whatever definition that is, and does not want to be in it, what step he or she should take?
So I think some help with a sex therapist to help that individual understand why they're reaching for pornography in the first place. What need is that filling for them? And some research suggests that people reach for pornography when they're bored. People reach for pornography because there may be some repressed sexual desire that hasn't been communicated to their partner. Looking at his definition of manhood, looking at his previous sexual experiences and his impression of those. So there are a wide variety of reasons as to why this individual may be reaching for porn in the first place. And often, to be quite honest, many people who do reach for porn aren't fulfilled by it. So this idea that it's fulfilling for people when they reach for pornography isn't always the case. Often people are left feeling empty and in search for something more meaningful anyway. So I would start there. I would start at trying to assess for this individual's reasons for why he is seeking out pornography.
That person need to think and ask himself or herself what questions. I mean, of course, they can approach a professional therapist. I mean, here we are in the Muslim community, and people don't even want to talk to mental health experts for other issues, much less something private and what they are watching.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be needed, may be required. And but is there any self-help for that person who think he or she might be able to work on it?
So I would say it depends on the level of negative impact on their functioning. So if you make the comparison, as you mentioned earlier, to addiction, there are people who drink alcohol and function just fine, for example. And then there are people who drink alcohol and cause car accidents, or are unable to maintain employment or parent their children appropriately. So most people who come into therapy, for example, do so because there has been some negative impact in their functioning that has caused them to want to get help for this. So, for as far as self-help goes, there is help for addiction, but it depends on the impact on one's functioning. I wouldn't be able to point to a book necessarily that someone could sort of pick up to see if they have a problem or if they want solutions or ways to stop looking at pornography. There's always, if you feel that you have an addiction, there's a 12-step model that's been validated in other areas of addiction that you could emulate, but I wouldn't be able to point to a particular source for self-help.
Well, here's a market for you. Would you like to be a bestseller? I can tell you, Sun started dealing with this topic about, I think, 2020, I think 1996 or 1997.
Yeah.
And written based on no professional expertise. And we even didn't know there is a discipline and a subdiscipline, and professionals like you who answer every question, it depends. We didn't know all of that. But those are one of the most popular article people come to our website for. So this is a sure, short way of publishing a best-selling book. So just a free advice, take it or not take it. Is your business. Now, if somebody approaches an imam, imams are a strange people in our community. They are given some salary, and the first prayer takes place, and say last prayer takes place about sometime 15, 16 hours apart, and they're supposed to be engaged throughout this period of time for the community, offering marriage counseling to mental health counseling and dealing with the genital harm. And this is just a strange world. I have written an article about how to professionalize the masjid. I can tell you it didn't make me any popular. But so those imams, it is highly likely some people confide in them. Imam, what can I do?
Yes.
You have another book coming up about how imam should deal with it.
I certainly appreciate all of your ideas. If I could just piggyback on something that San just mentioned. So, she is a social worker and a sex therapist. I'm a nurse and a sexuality counselor. And so people will often ask, well, what's the difference? Who do I, so what San mentioned is one of those indicators, right? The impact on someone's functioning. So if I were to see someone and there was a significant impact, that would be an initial indicator that I need to refer this person to a sex therapist. But, within this consideration of, self-help, within a wellness framework, right? First, you want to evaluate where the person is in terms of their readiness to change. So clearly this is bothering them in some way. They're coming in. Is this the first time it started bothering you? Have you been thinking about this for 20 years? Are you going to dedicate every second to it? Are you kind of dipping your toe in the pool? And then also doing an evaluation of where your strengths reside. Right? So wellness is really a strength-based approach. So when you come in, we're not interested in what's wrong with you. We want to know what's right with you. What are those things that you do really well? Because we can use those to reinforce whatever those goals are. If the goals are to, eliminate porn use in your life, no problem. Let's look at all these other, factors that impact your overall wellness and health. So there are many different approaches, and I think the reason where you might see that we're very nondescript is because that's our job. We're patient-centered, and every person who comes to us is a unique individual with a unique, situation.
Sure. So if imam is approached for this, should imam just give them your phone numbers? What are they supposed to do? Help me out.
So I think what you are describing is also what many physicians, for example, struggle with, which is part of the reason why this doesn't get addressed nearly as often as it should around this holistic approach to overall well-being, as Moira described earlier. And that is, if someone comes to you with an issue with this, I don't address it because I have no place to put this. And so if I have no one to refer you to, then I'm not going to ask additional questions about how this is impacting you. This isn't my area of expertise. And so unfortunately, even outside of the Muslim community, there aren't a whole lot of resources for this. There's a national organization that certifies sex therapists and counselors, and that is the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, ASECT. And if you go to asect.org, you would be able to locate a professional who may be able to help you with this issue. Now, that is generically speaking. There is no guarantee that if you go to that website and locate a professional, that person will be speaking to you from an Islamic or religious perspective. They will be speaking to you purely from the mechanics and the emotional and therapeutic perspective associated with this. If you are looking for someone who has sort of a Muslim perspective and understands the tenets of Islam, that's going to take a little bit more digging. I don't know that a directory of that kind exists right now. I may be wrong.
Yet.
No, this is very important conversation, by the way, what you're saying, if directory exists, because I'll share one experience with you. Although I'm not a imam in the sense that I have a job in a mosque, but Chicago is a strange place. We got 125 mosques and only 10 masjid have full-time imams, and that is intentional. They don't want one ethnic or one school of thought, so we go on rotation. So I'm an imam in the sense I give khutbahs in rotation. Now everybody is giving a virtual khutbahs. So somebody approached me, depression and things like that, and I have so I recommended him. I think you are at this university. Why don't you go? There must be counselor. Counselor advised him to commit haram. They say, well, leave your wife for a while. Both of you should look for other partners. And if you still feel like going back, you go back. After that, I start developing a list of Muslim counselors. Now, mashallah, the field is growing. There is a Journal of Muslim Mental Health. If you're not aware of it, you should subscribe. Maybe you should write articles there on this particular topic, because this is a serious topic. So for Imam, your advice is to tell very clearly that, listen, I'm not a professional in this field. Go to that website and look for someone to help you. Maybe talk to your physician if you have insurance. I don't know if insurance covers things of this nature. But Imam cannot get away from this. Imam will have to say a few things. And one of the things which I think about 30 years ago I wrote, that was about, not 30 years, 25 years ago, Imam's Guide on Domestic Violence. I'm not a certified social worker, but I felt there was a tremendous need. And that thing became so popular, although it has a disclaimer that is not a professional advice. I'm not a professional in this field, that New York State adopted it as a, in their clergy handbook to deal with domestic violence. And there is a Christian who is a lady who is a pastor. She started using it in her teaching. So I think something based on common sense type of things, there is a need. So please consider it. And you can write as many times, it depends, as much you like, but it is going to be helpful. Now, a young person, so a person came and was worried, extremely worried, a pious person, a very nice person. And his little daughter, who is in maybe 3rd or 4th grade, some other kid gave her a printed pornographic image. And he's completely devastated. He wants to drop her from that school, take her to some school. What should I do? And all of that. And the concept of, a child is a child, and a concept of, what is the role of forgiveness and using as a teaching moment occurred to him only when he spent some time with me. And after coming back, he say, oh, my wife was saying I shouldn't have told you about that. I say, well, that's true. If it will be my daughter, I will not be talking to you. But tell me, when you talk to me, did it help or it didn't help? As far as this thing is concerned, this is going to go nowhere. That who came to me, talked to me. A lot of people talk to you as an imam. You have to handle. The reason I'm mentioning this thing is that parents and teachers also need guidelines how to handle, when children stumble upon it or somebody pushes it through them, because this might be a mechanism of the what they call it, the human trafficking of children and using them in a criminal enterprise of pornography. So there is some guidelines needed there. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that. And what you have described sort of illustrates sort of the many subjects that come up around issues of sexuality. So there's pornography, there is sexual trauma, there is molestation. And so we would all love to sort of wrap our children in a bubble and protect them from these things. When I was growing up, we had Clara Muhammad School in Washington, D.C. And so there was some insulation there because you were in a Muslim school. But even there, children are children all over the world. There will be things that your children will still be exposed to, maybe to an even lesser degree, but exposed nonetheless. And so it is very important for educators, for not only teachers and imams, but anyone who sort of interacts with the public in some capacity to have some knowledge about this. And the first step that I encourage people to do is something that we all did in sort of getting our certification as sex therapists and sex counselors, is have an understanding of your own implicit bias. What are your own thoughts around sexuality and sexual functioning and pornography? Because that's going to be the lens through which you look when you are engaging any individual around issues like that. So in the scenario that you described, that parent who reacted, and which I totally understand, may not have thought that maybe that child who gave his daughter that picture was projecting because someone had abused him or her. And so it's important to, you spoke about forgiveness. It's also important to have empathy. What I find a lot in sex therapy is when two people pair up, you never know what their different experiences or pathologies are and how they're playing off of one another. And so just take an inventory of your own perspectives about these things, so that you understand a little bit better why you respond the way that you do.
That you brought another point there. Why that child who gave, how a school and educator who found out about it. I mean, these were the educators who brought it to the attention of parents. And how they dealt with that child and connected with parents, because in this case, there may be, as you say, in some cases, there are other type of criminal behavior might be involved in there. Well, this conversation has, I think, been thoughtful. You both are very thoughtful people, very measured people. It's not easy to force you to open up, but you remain professionals. And I have to do my job of trying to get things out of you. I have some suggestions for future writings. I mean, everybody Googles everything, right? And yesterday we faced at Muslim Network Television some technical problems. And I was being approached by different people. I said, why don't you Google it? Because I Google it. Sometimes you believe this thing will not be there, and it is there. So a whole lot of, I think, people are talking about how to deal with this or that. I think thoughtful contribution from Muslim counselors, Muslim therapists is very much needed. And I think that for that reason, I am truly obliged and thankful for you both taking your time out to share your thoughts with us. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And you have been watching Muslim Network TV. We're always there 24/7 on Galaxy 19 satellite, muslimnetwork.tv, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and pretty soon on Apple TV as well. This is a place you find difficult conversation, things which America rarely talks about, is something which we are interested in talking about. I hope you will continue to tune in. And I would like to thank, along with our guest, our producer, Aliza Majid and Sumaya Heather. Peace and salam.